Miss Liz, tea time, yeah. Making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Miss Liz, tea time, yeah. Making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz. Tea time. Making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time, time.
Well, good morning and welcome to Tea Time. We are back with a new week with some new stories, some new guests who are going to bring a new flavor to the table. We're going to be making a difference today for the next generation with the beautiful Jill Ammon Vanderwood. She's sitting in the back of the studio. So we're going to get the disclaimer going. We're going to get the bio, and then we're going to get Jill in here. We're going to spill a good, strong TEA this morning with you. So for all of you out there, share this Tea Time. Click on the share. We are streaming to multiple platforms this morning. We are sharing on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, all of the good places. So if you're on those channels, please give Miss Liz a follow and subscribe so you can see all these amazing tea times. Switch over to the YouTube channel and give that a quick subscribe, and you can see all of these tea times live or replays. There are over 250 different shows. So this morning, we're going to start off with a good, strong cup of tea. We're going to give you a good flavor of outcome. So you get to choose. So we're going to talk about that with Jill. So before we get started, here we go. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz myself is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forward in good faith. However, may bring forward dialogues and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment in taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussion for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It is significant to know that the show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or the panelist discussion, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, through my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in today's show in any aspect, I myself, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that the show is not made for you at this time, I respect that wish and will see you at a later show at a later date and time. And again, all tea times this year are done on Thursday, 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If they're not on a Thursday, it's because they are a rescheduled show, which will be a Monday or Tuesday. So now a little bit on Jill. Jill Ammon Vanderwood is the author of 14 books, including her latest series, The Path You Choose series, where the reader is the main character and asked to make choices throughout the book. There are up to 15 possible endings. Jill is active in her writing circle and busy with her Quilt Guild. She has won numerous awards for her writing, including 3 Golden Gill Awards and the Writer of the Year from the League of Utah Writers, Indie Excellence Award, 2 Mom Choices Award, and the Dove Seal of Approval. She grew up in Portland, Oregon, and is in a family with 11 children. Jill and her husband have four grown kids, nine grandchildren, and three great grandchildren. Her family is her main joy and motivation. So let's get Jill in here so we can spill a good, strong cup of tea. And I can take a sip of tea. Good morning, Jill.
Good morning, Liz.
So it is an honor to have you here, Jill. So let's get into who Jill was as a little girl and who Jill is now as a great grandma.
Well, I think I had a big imagination, and as bad as that could be, I became a little bit of a liar because
Ooh.
I thought I could make up a story that sounded better than the truth. I had to learn about that the hard way.
A lot of learned lessons, right? Because you're a great grandma. So the little ones, do they try to pull a fast one on you?
Oh, yeah, but they're not very good at it. I mean, I can see through it.
So, Jill, what got you into writing?
It was when I had grandchildren, believe it or not, and the grandchildren wanted me to tell them stories when they would sleep over, and I would make up. I had to tell them Jack and the Beanstalk every single time, so I started changing it
Oh.
and putting them in as characters. And then I decided, why don't I just make some stories with them as the main characters? And that's how it all began. Then I thought maybe I can write these stories. So I started going to some writing workshops and classes and decided that I was interested in writing.
So you've written over 14 books. So how long does it take you to write a book?
I'm trying to put out a book every year.
Every year?
I haven't quite gotten there, but I mean, there's some years where I didn't. But most years I put out a book.
So it takes you about a year to write it and process and publish and edit and all that good stuff, right?
Yes, I hire somebody to edit my work before I do anything with it.
So how old were you when you wrote your first book?
When it was published, I was about probably 53.
Oh my goodness, Jill, I would not even give you. I don't even like you have 14 books out there. So 14 guys, do the math here. She's saying 53.
Yeah,
Wow. See,
I'm a late bloomer.
you just never know what age, right? You can be to start something. But Jill, I would have never gave you that. I would have thought like you were around my age. But you're a great grandma, so yeah, you'd have to be a little older. I'm a grandma, so you know. So Jill, let us know a little bit about the beanstalk. What was it about the Jack and the Beanstalk that really got you to?
Well, I was just making up different characters for Jack and the Beanstalk and having other children go up the beanstalk with Jack. And then I decided, I'm tired of this Jack and the Beanstalk. Let's try something else.
So how did you change the story?
I just added my grandchildren as characters, putting them up the beanstalk with Jack.
So they took their own little adventure up the stalk to see what they could do. Yeah, because I think when he climbed the beanstalk, he went and got the golden egg and he got a bunch of things. Did he not? The golden egg was one of them. I remember that.
Yes. I don't know, but these grandchildren are in their 30s now, so I don't tell that story to them anymore.
So they're like my age kid. My children, my daughter's going to be 31 on the 28th. So yeah, it does go by fast. The years go by fast. So any intentions of writing any new books in the new year? Or?
Oh, yes. Well, there was a book that just came out in July, so that was Keeping Secrets. And
So
then
go ahead.
I went and spoke with an agent at a conference recently, and we're working on an idea that might work for him. We'll see. And I just want to have characters that have handicaps to be and show their superpowers besides looking at only their handicap.
So is that going to be another series of choosing the outcomes, or?
No, this will be a different series, but I'm still working on the path you choose as well. But I'm just taking a little step away and then come back.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about the path you choose? Because I think it's a really innovative way of getting the reader involved in the story. So could you tell us a little bit about how that became?
Well, I always like to read those books with my kids. Well, for one thing, when kids are reluctant readers, when they would read a choose your own adventure type story, then they could um, only read maybe one or two of the endings, and then they would feel like they'd accomplished the whole story. But then you can go back and read more. But I decided to use that concept, only use it for teaching moral lessons. I mean, things that are hard for kids to make choices about. So the first book in that series is called Off Target, and it's a story where, and it's based on true stories that I found in the headlines, but it's not a real story. It's fiction. So in that story, the kids find a gun in the parents' nightstand and it's loaded, and the kid that owns the house, well, took all of his friends up to see this gun, and they all took turns holding it. And then the reader has to decide, do they want to come back the next day and shoot this gun, or do they want to should they tell somebody because this is dangerous? And so that's how the choices start. And some of the choices don't turn out so well. Actually, somebody could get shot, but I don't have anybody die in the book. But they do realize the consequences, that a gun, it shouldn't be in the hands of children without adult supervision. I'm not against guns. I think that children shouldn't have guns on their
Yeah.
own.
So
And
how is it at the end of the book? Is it throughout the book that you're asking them to make a choice, or is it
yes,
at the end of the story?
no, it's throughout the book. So at every corner, they have to decide which direction to go. So at the end, there's several stories. There's one where they come back to shoot the gun. There's one where they tell somebody and they get the parents all get together and talk about it and tell the children. But one story goes as far as somebody's being bullied at school. He decides to take the gun. The kids encourage him to take the gun to school just to show the kids who's the boss. And that doesn't go so well. In one case, that story splits off. In one case, the main reader decides that he better tell somebody that he thinks his friend has a gun at school. And the other one, he actually goes into the cafeteria and flashes the gun around, and everybody's hiding it. So that's how it goes throughout the book. They could go off this one direction in the beginning, or they could go all the way to the end where something actually happens that's bad.
So like in each chapter, do you have a part, Jill, where you say what choice would you make for the outcome of
Yes.
this part of the story, and then you move on to the next part because of the choice that they make in that chapter,
Uh
then
huh.
it'll decide what's going to happen in the next chapter for them, correct?
Yes. And so they probably have more choices. When they see that somebody has a gun, do they tell somebody, or are they too afraid, or they don't think something's going to happen? And then at the end, there's endings throughout. So you don't read this book straight through. You read it according to what choices you make. So you turn to that page where that choice is. And then you'll have another choice and you'll turn to another page. So you might start at page one where everybody reads the first 6 pages together. And then you end up on page 50 something with your ending, and then somebody else is you're reading a different story, you end up on page 30, so on like that.
I think that's really cool. I think that's a really a good way to open up the mind, right? Because each kid that'll read it will have a different journey, you know, different outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really an incredible way to bring choices, you know, like do you make this choice on the left side or the right side, you know? And then the next kid next to that child reading the book will pick, you know, especially in a classroom when you have a classroom of like 30 kids, they all have
Yes.
different outcomes, right? So it makes a really good conversation. It brings open conversation of what choice did you make and why did you make that choice, you know?
Yes.
I,
And then if that
really like
choice
it.
didn't turn out well, you can go back and read a different one.
And you can read it over again, right? Because you, if you want to see a different angle of where the story will take you, if you go left instead of right the next time, it's really good for like book clubs and stuff like that for good open conversation, right? Like what choice did you make? Where did you go? What page did it take you to? Like there's a lot of conversation that can come from that book.
Yes. And then I also wanted to use that book in a group setting where you divide it into 14 or 15 groups, how many endings are in the story, and have each group read one part of the story, and then have a spokesperson come at the end. What did your group learn from that?
Oh, that's really interesting. So do you have these books in the schools, Jill?
I'm working on getting them into schools. Uh, I'm talking about it every chance I get, and I have been to schools, but not with this series. I have a book about bullying, and I have done assemblies with that.
So what got you with the title? Because the title's called Off Target. So it's all about guns, the first book.
Yes,
So I
it's
think it's
about
good. I
guns.
think it's really good awareness as well because you're bringing awareness to guns. And like you said, you're not against guns. You know, children shouldn't have them. You know, um, you need to be responsible with a gun. First of all, it doesn't matter what your age is, right? You. So I
Hmm.
think that's really, really good. So then I want to jump into book two. So book two, you have it's on the rocks. So what's that one about?
On the rocks is a term that you use in drinking alcohol,
Oh,
and so this is about underage drinking. Now, there's two books that are very similar: On the Rocks and Cheers. On the Rocks is for boys, from a boy's point of view, because at a younger age you're more influenced by your own gender usually.
yeah.
And then the Cheers is a girl book. So a lot of the stories are kind of the same and maybe with different twists to them. And then there's some different stories in each book, but some of the pictures are the same. So they're just from a different point of view.
So book two is on the rocks. That's for the boys, and then Cheers is for the girls.
Yes, about underage drinking. And we've been hearing ads all the time that kids need to make a choice about drinking because some kids are starting to drink as young as 9 years old. And I wanted to target from 9 to 14-year olds with these books because sometimes you have a sibling who is doing something and you want to be just like that older brother or sister. And there's a danger in that. There's a danger for the teenager as well.
So Jill, what got you into that topic?
I have a lot of experience in my family with alcoholism, and I was married to an alcoholic at one point. I'm not now. And I've had to see this from the other side. I'm not a drinker, I don't drink at all, but I've had to witness this. And once there's an alcoholic in the family, it kind of runs through the family here and there. Even on my growing up side, there's a few people that have had problems with alcohol. So I thought maybe if kids could learn about it at a young age, they could make those choices early and they could see what could really happen because they're putting themselves in the place of the person who's making these choices. So they're actually making choices in the book themselves.
I think it's really empowering what you're doing, Jill. Like having these books, we don't speak of this, right? We don't speak of guns. We don't speak of underage drinking. We don't speak of these topics. Uh, and I like that you have these books out there. So the outcome in book number 2, let's get into book 2 and then we'll get into book 3. So for the boys, what choices do they have to pick from?
In the boys' book, there's a kid that there's been rumors at school that he is drinking, and that this one boy has come to school drunk a few times. And then that boy decides to have a party while the parents are gone and invites the main character to that. Well, he before the party, he brings out a flask at school and says, "Let's get this party started now. You want to come and have some drinks with me?" And then the character says, "Oh, I think those rumors are true. He is drinking, and he has to decide with his own classmate if he's going to go out on the playground and drink, or is he going to say no and go home." And it goes on like that. The two boys are home alone because the parents have decided to trust them for a weekend while the parents are away. And the older brother is starting to break rules right away and have friends over, and then they have a party. Him and his neighbor have a party, and the kid has to decide if he's going to go to that party. And then he has to decide, is he going to get in a car with a drunk driver? Is he going to, when somebody passes out at the party, is he going to call 911 or get out of there so he doesn't get in trouble? And those are the choices that go throughout the book.
So in the girls' book in book 3, you call it Cheers. Why that title?
Well, cheers is another drinking term, but so on the rocks, I used it as the drinking term and as they have an accident on the rocks on a cliff. So I used two examples there. And then in cheers, the girls are at a cheer practice, learning how to cheer and with an older girl. And she offers a glass of wine and says, "Let's have a toast because you did a good job on your cheers." And then she says, "You don't have to take the glass of wine, but at least hold on to it so we can clink glasses, you know." And then the main girl has to decide, am I going to drink this wine or should I put it back? Her friend puts hers back, but does she has to decide. And then the girl that was leading the cheers picks her up for a party, and she is already acting like she's pretty drunk before when they get in the car. And then at the party, the girl who was leading the cheerleading actually passes out, and she's been drinking since early in the day, and by the time she got to the party and drank more, she's had too much. And then she also has to decide, am I going to call 911? And her sister tells her to get in the car and get out of there. And she gets in the car with drunk driver. And the girls go on the freeway. They're being really loud, and she's in the middle of a dangerous situation if she made that choice.
So, and again, it's the same as book 1, right? They have different choices and different pages. So if they take the left side, they go to a certain page, and then if they take the right
Yes.
side. I think it's really incredible what you've done with these books. It really opens up, and they should be in schools, and I love the target 9 to 14 because that is a challenging time. That's where peer pressure comes in, bullying comes in. Just do it just one time, and that one time turns into 5 times, and then 5 times turns into a life addiction. Um, and I'm glad that you used your life story as well in a way to make people choose. Your choices do have consequences and stuff like that. So growing up, Jill, did you have to make a lot of choices?
Well, everybody does. And sometimes the choices I made were wrong, apparently, because I married somebody that was the wrong person. And I also, I drank a little bit when I was a teenager. And I know my parents would have not approved of that. And I've decided that there's no way I want alcohol in my life. I, I don't need it. I like to have a clear mind.
Yeah. So, were you a young? How young were you, Jill, when you were drinking?
Probably 17.
So it's that.
It's just a couple times where somebody handed me something tonight. And so I had to make a choice too, and the choice I made was wrong. But I had to live with my choices.
Well, at 17, the peer pressure is right there, right? Like the teenage
Hmm.
years are hard. People say, oh, teenagers, they have a lot of peer pressure. A lot of bullying goes on during the oh, just try it just a little bit, and a little bit turns into a lot. A couple of years later, I'm really glad, though, Jill, that, that this is something we don't really talk about is the kids, the addictions, how young they start, and where they can turn out to, right, by a choice that we make. For any of the listeners that are out there, if you're struggling with any of this, like, I think these books would be really incredible for you to grab. If you're trying to teach your children different outcomes in life, make different choices. This series is really incredible to grab. So, Jill, if they wanted to grab this series, I want to talk about your other books as well. For this series, the Choose the Path, um, where can they find these books?
These books are available on Amazon.com, and they're also on Kindle, and they're set up the same way. There's a guide at the beginning, and it tells you what pages to choose for each story. So if you wanted to print out that guide, you could just go from one story to the other. You could skip the first 6 pages or whatever to go right into the story, because every story starts the same.
So, and Jill, I want to get back into the other books now because this is a series, right? The book one, two,
Yes.
and three. So, your first series, like your first set of books, you mentioned at the beginning of the show you were bullied. So, you wrote a book about bullying. So, is
Yes.
that based on your life story as well, or is that based on something that happened in your life or somebody that you know that got bullied?
Okay, before you go to that, I wanted to remind you that there's 4 books in the Path You Choose
Oh,
series.
oh,
And
I only have the three. Is there a fourth one?
okay, the one that you had up on the screen is called Keeping Secrets, and that came out in July.
Okay, yes, that's the one. Yeah, that's your newest release. Yes, that's the one that you had sent me. So sorry about that. So let's get into the book four before we jump into the other
I'm
books.
sorry.
No, no, that's
um,
good. Thank you for reminding me. I was just like, no, I'm missing something here. So thank you for reminding me for that. So keeping secrets, what's that one about?
okay, this one would I've had some book reviews on, and they recommend this to be just a little bit older audience,
Okay.
um, because even though some of those things can happen to younger kids. Okay. The girls are at a slumber party, and they're probably between 13, 14, 15 years old. And they have, they've been doing the things that girls do, talking about boys, dancing, making videos, and then they decide to play a game. And this is to tell your deepest, darkest secret. And the secrets get kind of dark because some people are really dealing with some things. So, one of the girls has been a witness to a crime, and she doesn't know whether it was a hit and run accident. And she doesn't know whether to get her brother in trouble or keep this secret. But eventually it's going to get out anyway because the car's been damaged. There might be blood evidence on the car because he hit somebody. And so that's a secret. There's one about a girl that's on drugs. She's been sneaking out at night with her brother, and they started out drinking, but then the brother's friends a drug dealer, and he's giving her drugs, and she doesn't even know what, but she's addicted to it, and she needs to get some help. And then another one is, let's see, there's a girl that's been thinks she's been kidnapped when she was a young child, and she's found some evidence in the house. There's people that are um, they they make guesses because one girl runs out of the slumber party and she says, "I'm never telling my secret, never. No one's going to hear my secret." And she runs out, and it makes everybody think what that secret could be. And so the girls go off on, maybe she's on steroids because she's gaining a little weight. She's maybe, let's see if she's eating too much. Let's see, maybe she's hiding a runaway under her bed in her room, and different things like that. So they're trying to guess her secret in a couple of the stories. And then at the end, you hear her secret, and you can see whether they were way off on the secret or not. So one of the girls' secret is that she's been molested by an uncle. And then the mom comes in and tells her story. And when the mother was young, she was playing hide and seek in her neighbor's house, and came across some pictures that were child pornography. And then she tells about what happens when you try to keep a secret and it eats away at you. And she got so that she was so depressed that she couldn't talk, and they had to put her in a mental hospital. And the mom tells that sometimes you should tell your secret because keeping it is more harmful. And the people that were involved could have been, in more danger because she didn't speak up. And those are the difficult secrets. And then I handle them by having the kids try to help them solve it. And there are places where you can go for help if you don't want to turn to your parents. There's a school counselor, there's the minister at your church, there's a lawyer, a doctor. Those people, the counselor sometimes has to tell the secret if it's harmful. They're not they're not doctors unless they're doctors. And so these people, the clergy and the doctor and the lawyer, can keep your secret. It's confidentiality. But they will probably also help you try to solve it.
You got me, because trigger warning for everybody out there. Some of the topics that we're talking about are really heavy for anybody that is suffering with addictions or secrets, or um, Jill, I really want to thank you for bringing this series. It was a little trigger for me because it kind of was like you were telling my story. I got pregnant by an uncle who I was molested by, so it kind of just took me back for a few seconds. But
I'm sorry.
no, it's all good. I'm okay. It's just it was. I felt like you were telling my story, so I was just like, how does she know my story? How does she know my secret? Um, well, it's not a secret because it is in books, but Jill, I think that these books are really incredible. For the viewers and listeners out there, we need more books like this. We need more awareness. And through storytelling, you really can help and save a life. You really can make a difference. Jill, before we went live, you talked about making a difference for the next generation. I think this series is really going to make a difference for a lot of people. So, what age group is this book rated at?
Well, the people that reviewed it said maybe start with 12-year-olds instead of 9-year-olds.
So, 12 and up.
Because, so I'm thinking maybe, the young adult, the young adult, because by the time they're 18, maybe they have already gone through all this or they're over it. But if they haven't dealt with it, this might be a way that they could help. It could also bring conversations with the parents, or somebody that they trust. For instance, one of the girls the one that had the biggest secret, she was actually um, she got with an online predator, and he was much older, but she didn't know it. And when she had to finally tell her secret, she told her older sister. And the sister said, "You do have to tell your mom, though." But at least she got to talk to somebody. So I feel like you need to talk to somebody because you don't want to be buried with these secrets. You could save someone else. For instance, the girl that was being molested, she had younger nieces, and she thought maybe those girls might be suffering with that too. And so by her speaking out, she could stop that before it got any further. So the best thing to do is to find somebody to talk to that you trust and tell your secret. I just talked to a woman who was in her 70s, and when I told her about this book, she was triggered like you, and she said, "I have a secret and I'm going to be buried with it." She said, "I have never told my secret in it." She finally told me a little bit, and it was similar to yours. And she, see, if she would have told that secret, it might have solved the problem sooner, I think.
Well, that's the thing, right? Well, back then, when things are happening like this, incest and stuff like that, we didn't speak of it, you know. And I think your series, your book series, is really going to open some doors and some conversations. You know, it's going to save a life because you're giving them these hard topics to pick from. You know, you talked about a lot of serious issues that are happening today in today's world. You know, being kidnapped, being trafficked. Meeting a predator online. The internet is a good resource for education and input, but it's also a dangerous place as well because there are a lot of predators or a lot of people that are using it for wrongdoings. Um, for anybody that's out there and you're suffering, like, grab this series. Like, I really think that this series, keeping secrets, it is going to trigger some of us, but triggers are good because if you know your triggers, then that means you're healing. It means that you're working on stuff. Um, and there was so much of that back 20, 30 years ago where we didn't speak of it. We kept those secrets. And even today, we're keeping those secrets. But we need to start having that conversation and saying, you know what, it's okay to speak, it's okay to share. And this is why I do tea time, is so that we can share, so we can heal. You're bringing a lot of topics to the table where people can have that discussion. And I think it's really deeply important. If any of the schools and universities are listening to this tea time, or will check it on the replay, see if you can get this series into your classrooms and have you know, I think it would be good for book reports as well. Why people choose the outcomes that they choose, and that. Jill, I really want to thank you again for sharing this series with my listeners out there. This tea time is really going to be important, so let's get it out there. Let's share it. Let's get that information out there. Um, but it sounds like you took your personal life and turned it into storytelling. It's like Jack and the Beanstalk. You got tired of reading about Jack, so you put your children in and your grandchildren in, and that's what we have to do sometimes, right? Is we have to use our stories to make stories so that other people can heal and open up those wounds and stop keeping secrets. I love the titles. I was not aware of any of these stories, Jill, prior, and I think it's really incredible that I'm learning what these books are about live with you at this moment, because I thought it was completely different stories. Like, so thank you for that.
It's
I,
completely different.
I usually do my homework, but I guess I didn't dig enough. Like, just the titles, on Target. I was just like, okay, so there's a Target practice or something, like my mind went with the titles. It didn't go into any of these issues and topics that we're dealing with today in today's world, you know. And we've been dealing with them for generations, like centuries, Um, Addiction has been for centuries. Bullying has been forever. I don't know when it started and when it's going to end. Let's hope it ends soon. So let's get into the bullying book. I want to do a little bit about that because I do a lot of tea times on bullying and prevention of bullying. So was that something that you dealt with as a child?
It is. Uh, I put my story in there first, but this book is anthology. So there are about 42 different people who contributed stories about bullying, and each one of them, after they tell their story, they told how they became strong and how they what they did to overcome this and in the way that they did. And one of my granddaughters was being bullied at school, and I was reading to her class at school, and she um, came in. She wouldn't come in the classroom, and I went out in the hall and talked to her. And she said all the kids were bullying her, and she was crying. And I didn't see the teacher handling it, so I decided that since she wanted me to write about bullying, I was going to do that. And so my story's in there, several of my family members, and then I also interviewed a man who was a NBA All-Star basketball player. And he almost didn't become a basketball player because he was being bullied in the locker room, and told his story and how the coach blackened the windows and let him practice without anybody watching him. And it turned out that mostly the boys that were bullying him saw his potential, and they saw that he could be better than them, and they thought they would lose their chance to become basketball players if he got anywhere, so they tried to get him to stop being a basketball player. And different people, even some movie stars, have I interviewed about their story. One lady, when she was young, she had her teeth were more gum than teeth, and it was embarrassing, and people were calling her Gumby. And it turned out that she became a advertiser for toothpaste. Can you believe that? And she just learned not to put her lip all the way up. And she became a model, and then she was an actress, and she overcame that. And she just said to kids, do whatever you're good at, find out what you're good at, and just practice that. You don't have to let the other kids know. For instance, her nephew, she said, was um, being bullied at school, and he found out he was good at tennis. So when he wasn't at school, he was practicing tennis, and he went a long ways with that. You don't have to be what people say you are, like you told us earlier.
Yeah.
I don't have to be bullied anymore. I was bullied in school because I was a new girl and because I told on somebody. And so all the boys in the class decided that they were going to get me, and they did. And no matter where I went, they tried to trip me, they spit at me, all kinds of things. When even after school, I had eggs thrown at me. I had spit in my hair and long hair, and I had to hold it out here so it wouldn't drip on me. It was just nasty stuff. And I overcame that. And I'm not that person that they say I was.
I really think that this morning's tea time is really inspiring. It's really shows you that you can make a difference, you can change your life, but I the effects of bullying last a lifetime, you know. Uh, I'm sure certain things trigger you as well, Jill. If you see somebody getting bullied, or it brings back that memory of, somebody tripping somebody, it really does affect us for lifetime, you know but we can make a difference, and we can change our stories. We can be that person, like you said, the lady for the toothpaste. You just never know the outcome of your life. And I really think that this morning's tea time isn't showing me that, just keep pushing through. No matter what happens, just push through, and continue on. Be that person that they all say you can't be. Someone says you can't do that, you go out and you do it. You show the world that you can. Uh, it's really, really inspiring this morning. This tea time is not anywhere where I thought it was going to go. So thank you so much, Jill, for it, because I think we need these heavier tea times sometimes. You know, we need a good, strong cup of tea, and we need to get these topics out there. So I want to talk about your tea before we wrap up because we're getting there. If I give you the letter TEA, what three words are you going to give me this morning?
We talked about this now. I can't remember. I'll see. I think it was T was teaching,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't it? And E was educating.
Example and education. Yep.
Example, example, and then I said A was author.
Yes. So do you want to tell me why you gave me those three words?
Because I feel like my goal is to teach. And I've been a Girl Scout leader, and I know that kids don't make choices very well. So when I was a Girl Scout leader, was, I would take the girls into the store and they get to pick out what they wanted for their craft. They couldn't make that choice. There were too many. So I learned that you have to just give them a few choices. So I would get three things and they can choose pretty well when there's only three, but if you give them too many,
Yeah.
they can't. So in my books, I just do a few choices. And I've just been around children my whole life. I'm the third child out of 11. And then I had 4 children of my own, and then 9 grandchildren, and the three great. So I've always been around children, and I'm always an advocate for children. I want them to have their best life. So teaching is what I'm doing.
So and for the word E, for the letter E, you gave me example and education. I knew education was going to come from you because we talked about that before we went live. You know how important education is. Uh, so what's the example?
You can't expect someone to do something that say you're doing something that's not right. You can't expect them to learn not to do it by you. But sometimes they do. Say parents that smoke, a lot of times the kids will say, "Oh, there's no way I'm going to smoke." So example does work sometimes the opposite, but usually you have to be the example for the right way.
So and I want to get into your A. Your A is author. So you want to share a little bit about that?
Well, I went through school like everyone else and some college, and I raised my children, and I wasn't an author. I didn't know. Nobody told me you're very good at this. In fact, I failed typing in school, which is keyboard, because I was absent. I was sick and I was absent, missed too much, and I couldn't catch up. So, and I had to use keyboard. Had to learn that as an older person. It's being an author has changed me, and hopefully it'll help change others in a good way. After being bullied, I made a vow to myself that I would never speak up. I would never do anything that would call attention to me because I didn't want to be bullied again. And that lasted until I became a writer in my 50s. So, and now I'm speaking and I'm not afraid of it anymore.
I love that you're a speaker as well, Jill, because I think we need more speakers like you out there, you know, who bring the content because you have the books as well. So, you know, but you can give that as an example of here's the books, you know. But when you're speaking to a class or to a group of people, what is the topic that you're usually speaking on?
Well, I usually, when I'm invited to a classroom, it's usually a teacher that I've been going to for years. And I usually bring my first books, the Through the Rug series, and the kids will write stories about it. Like there's a grandma that's doing crazy things, and the grandma will, they will have the kids write, "Does your grandma do crazy things?" and sometimes it's a real story and sometimes it's a made up story. It gets them thinking and their imagination going. So most of the time it's my fiction books that I'm talking to kids. I like to go to my grandchildren's classes. I want them to have that experience of having their grandma reading her own books to their class, and I've done a lot of that. I've also done school assemblies about my book, which we didn't talk about, What's It Like Living Green? And I've also done um, assemblies about drugs and alcohol. And I've also done assemblies about bullying.
I think it's really important. You're bringing so many good topics and issues that everyone is affected by, you know. Uh, what's it like living green? I'm going to guess that that's like living the clean life, like climate change and recycling. Is that what that one's about?
Well, that one is about mostly there's stories of kids who have done things like starting their own recycling business. There's a boy who built his organization is called Ryan's Well, and he built clean water wells in Africa. And they're just kids that did things. That one started saving the rainforest organization. So there were others, but it's not in my mind right now. So I wrote about kids that were doing living by example and making good examples that other kids could follow, and some adults who lived off the grid, and how things cause pollution, and so it's a nonfiction book, and it's about the environment, and it's how, and at the end of every chapter it says take a green leap, and it has a frog, and it tells them take a green leap by turning the water off while you brush your teeth and that sort of
Oh,
thing.
I kind of like that, and that's good for me because I'm that one that likes to run the water when I'm brushing my teeth. So I should turn my water off. Well, that's really so. Jill, you also have a book club. So how can people get into the book club?
Well, on my website it says join the book club. It just gives you a free ebook of Through the Rug. Sometimes that doesn't work. So if it doesn't work, you can always email me and I'll send you a copy ebook.
So on your website as well, I noticed that you have a blog. And on the
Yes.
blog, you have some incredible topics. You have the writing and publishing, reading and watching, advice from grandma, uh, things that matter, and I'm only one grandma. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that before we wrap up?
Well, I like to, I don't just write one blog, so each blog is about different topics. So, about different books, experiences I've had. There's one about for things that matter. I tell about how I lost my hair when I was eighth grader. My hair just fell out in handfuls, and how that experience affected me, and then how I found out what I found out about it, and that my hair did grow back. So, and then I had people say that that happened to them, and hopefully their hair will grow back too. But it's very hard when you're an eighth grader.
Yeah. So, so Jill, you have the things that matter, and you also have reading and watching, writing and publishing. So, are these things that you encourage people to do?
These are things that I write about from my experience. So the last one I probably wrote about my new book that's Keeping Secrets. And I'm going to start writing a series on writing and publishing where I do short articles about my experiences in writing, how I started, what kind of things happened, and what I recommend. So I have so many topics that I want to write about on that topic so they can help other people say, hey, she did it. Maybe I can do it.
If anybody like you've inspired me this morning, Jill, with what you do. It's truly inspiring to know that there is this option out there. There is this choice. These types of books out there. It's completely different, and it opens up the mind, you know, and choices of teaching us at a younger age as well. Because the age group that you're working with is 9 to 12, and then you said the last book is up 12 and up, you know, at such a young age, you're getting the minds opening up to decide and make a choice. And choices lead to outcomes in life, you know. If you go the left way, sometimes you know you get married to the wrong person, and I've done that too, Jill. I've married the wrong person, you know. But it gives us that lesson in life to teach us that it's not over. We can still try again, make another choice, and have better outcomes.
It's
So
never too late to make a
right.
different choice.
So Jill, I asked you to describe yourself in one word, and you gave me the word persistent. Why that word?
Because if something doesn't work, I tried a different direction. I had a friend when I first started writing, and I said, I think that only the very best writers ever make it as a writer. And she said to me, or the most persistent. And that's stuck with me the whole time.
That's
Don't.
cool. I like that word because persistent means that you never give up, right?
Mhm.
But you're also letting people know that you know what you still have that, and all of us writers, I'm a writer myself. We have this imposter syndrome where we think we're somebody else can be better, right? Somebody else can do it better until we write our own stuff. And do you read any of the books that you write, Jill, or is that
Of
something that
course,
you don't?
you have to reread your book tons of times before you publish it. And then the publisher gives it back to you, and then you reread it again. You're looking for errors, you're looking for, I really meant to say this. So you're reading them all the time. And then there's, since I'm writing about so many different topics, if somebody says they were going to interview me about what's it like living green, like what just came up, I will often go back through my book because it's been a while since I wrote it and refresh my mind on it.
So, Jill, what message would you like to give to the audience this morning?
I'm not sure whether to give a message about writing or about reading. Um,
Whatever feels in your heart, what message would you like us to hear this morning from you?
if you have a message that you want to share, maybe you can become a writer too. Maybe you can become a speaker. Maybe you can get your message out there just like I did.
I really want to thank you, Jill. I've learned so much this morning. I did not know that this tea time was going this way. I do my homework, but I didn't do enough of my homework. And I really want to thank you for sharing and going live with me and bringing the topics to the table. For anybody that might be living with secrets or addictions or topics that we spoke of this morning, if you need help, reach out to your local services in your community, in your country. There are hotlines all over. If you need to speak to anybody and you would like to reach out to Jill or myself, you're more than welcome to. um, I want to thank the listening audience out there for joining me this morning and your comments and all of that. I've seen them. I really appreciate them as well. Uh, Jill, you have a lot of thank you. You inspired me. Uh, Motivational uh, tea time, really empowering tea time, Miss Liz. Thank you. So, Jill, thank you for sharing this morning with all of us out here. We will be back this afternoon at 3 p.m. Returning guest Deanne Boyne will be joining us, and she'll be bringing in her new children's book that's called Boomers. So we're going to be talking about children's books. We're going to be talking about a lot of educational books today. The 7 p.m. Tea time has been canceled and will not be rescheduled due to personal reasons for that guest, which I respect and wish him well. And who knows, maybe in the future he might be back, but as of now, he will not be on Tea Time. I want to thank everybody for sharing these tea times and getting them out there. Um, Word of mouth goes a long way. These tea times are created for awareness, to teach educational awareness that all stories can make a difference, like Jill has this morning with all of us. So share your stories and let's all make a difference and let's share our TEA with the world, one cup of tea at a time. And I'll see everybody at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the second tea time of this week.